even though we love it, for some reason they don't seem to love it. And there's a few reasons. One is, almost no university students are interested. They're interested in blockchain in general. Every university now has a blockchain class. No universities have Bitcoin classes. Academics at universities are not that interested in our open problems. We also have FANG, and they are out there skimming everything off the top. They have extremely sophisticated recruiting. They have a big budget, and they are taking a lot. The experienced devs are more or less trying to avoid the hype altogether. And for those devs that have been around Bitcoin, well, they probably bought some way back, and so they're off perfecting their citadels and keto diets, and your fiat means nothing to them. And for those that are testing the waters, for those that are interested, we really have lost a lot of the narrative of what's fun. And, I think, trying to, there's definitely more welcoming communities than ours. And so this adds up to a pretty grim picture. And so those are the challenges, but I will tell you a few things that we've tried at Chaincode. Just to be clear, Chaincode is not the answer. We have no interest in scaling. We have no interest in being all of education. And so, this is some things that we've tried, but we hope that others will pick up the mantle and run with it. And so we've, for the most part, hosted 2 different programs. The first one is our residency program. That was started by BlueMat back in 2016. We ran the last one in 2019, and it works. So, the idea is that the last cohort that we ran, we brought in people from all over the world to New York City. We paid them to come. They spent 3 months in our office, and magically they find funding and support on the other side. And there's a few of these folks in our room right now, but it's an extremely effective program. The problem is it's pretty exclusionary. We can't take chances on people that we're going to spend 3 months with, and so yes, it brings legitimate developers into the fold, but it is certainly not bringing a lot of volume with it. So we were thinking about how to make this a little bit more accessible, and 2020 handed us the gift of making sure everything went online, which is what we did. And we were inspired by our favorite network to try to create a scalable peer-to-peer learning program that we could run just as easily for 5 as 5,000. And so we came up with the concept of essentially an online book club. We called it a seminar. And we wanted to not necessarily just recreate a residency online, but actually take advantage of what online learning does well. And what online learning does extremely well is the ability to deeply study the best technical material in the comfort of your own home. What it doesn't do particularly well is build community. And we understand that all the content is already out there. Yes, we packaged it up, but all the content is already out there. And so, we wanted to create something that had social pressure and the social accountability of learning with others. And, we've been experimenting with those mechanics now for 2 years, but we introduced things like weekly one-on-ones so that you could get to know other people, other participants, small discussion groups, and for the most part, it seems to be working. And what's, I think, super cool is that when people actually do have the opportunity to come together, they really enjoy it. And this picture down in the lower right from El Salvador, and then the other one is from last night. And here's real-time Gloria seeing how many PRs she has to review or make report. But if this sounds interesting to you, you can go and check out learning.chaincode, and we've put hundreds of people through this material. So, I think that's cool, but I think what would be more cool, and it started to happen, is the idea of people taking all of this and doing their own thing. There's nothing that special about us running these, and so we've seen people do this in other languages, in Spanish, Portuguese. We've seen people do this with their own friend group, and all it really takes is an organizer to coordinate, And if you would like to run one of these for your local meetup or local community, we'd be happy to help. There's no reason that Chaincode has to run all these. So the main drawback here, however, is that you sort of have to be interested in Bitcoin in order to find something like this. And so it's not really expanding the pool. And so when we met someone through the seminar who was interested in running a little bit more of an international program, we cooked up something called Summer of Bitcoin. And so Carolee, Adi, and myself, we put together a program in 2020 that was modeled on Google's Summer of Code. And this matched university students with Bitcoin and Lightning open source projects where they were paid to contribute over their summer break. So we started this in India mostly, and the technical training in India was incredible. I was super impressed with the contributors that showed up. And they worked on a variety of different open source projects. We recruited 34 mentors. They all got paid in Bitcoin. It certainly wasn't perfect, but students managed to ship code, and in the end, it all sort of works out. I no longer work on this, which is great, because Adi now has grown the program. Last year, there were 20,000 applicants, which, you know, if you can imagine that kind of growth, it was 5,000 in 2020, 20,000 last year, maybe 100,000 this year. It's a million, I don't know. So the way I sort of see all these programs is they fit into a funnel. And that funnel starts with things that are pretty scalable on top. For the most part, so it's like books and videos and things like that. And then people can somehow send a signal or be able to discover things that are a little bit higher touch, like a seminar or Summer of Bitcoin. And then, you know, maybe there's a residency or something, and then grant. So if you're not American, that's Ulysses S. Grant. It's pretty funny. So while Summer of Bitcoin was wrapping up, Qala Kirk Cohen got in touch with me about a team that was putting together a program in Africa, and I was particularly interested in working on something like that because I think that a job training program is fascinating. Like, how does someone go from interested to employable in this ecosystem? And I think it was like entirely unclear what that pathing looked like. So it's like you read a book, maybe you figure out like there's this seminar thing, don't know what else. I don't know what else happens after that. And so we got to work on this and eventually turned into a project called Qala. So Qala is a Zulu word for start or beginning, and we hope that this is the beginning of scalable job training in Bitcoin. And the goal here is truly to get people working in Bitcoin, and in a place like Africa, that changes lives. So yeah, personally, this was a huge education for me. I learned a ton about Africa, even without setting foot there. And I think like a program like this is really where the rubber hits the road in terms of education and actually like changing someone's life in a short period of time. So, you know, one of the challenges working in a place like Africa is that it had a lot lower developer density than a lot of other places we run programs. And so we had, you know, 800 people apply. We did sort of this proof of work admissions process where applicants would spend 6 weeks going through Mastering Bitcoin with us, and another 5 weeks going through a seminar with us. We'd see how they interacted, we'd see if they kept showing up and kept putting in the work, and we ended up with 12 who graduated in July. So they all got jobs. There were definitely some life-changing stories in there, and the part of them getting jobs was actually much more challenging than we had hoped, because when we started the program, Bitcoin was at 47,000, and when we ended the program, it was under 20. So, you know, I guess like it wasn't entirely clear why folks that had been trained to this level and had been pre-vetted weren't able to land interviews and get jobs. But if you are interested in hiring people like this, then I'd love to learn more about what your needs are and how we can work together. So, you know, props to Galoy and Stackwork in particular, who grabbed a bunch. And so, yeah, we have a lot of good things happening, but ultimately all this effort has brought in tens of long-term contributors. Like, it's really high effort work. We don't see a lot of retention over time, and that's because we have a leaky bucket problem. So there's this marketer, his name is Seth Godin, and he has helped me better understand like, sort of the connection between education and the confusing messages that Bitcoin sends. So I think like education is about not just sort of a transfer of knowledge, but it's a cultural transmission. And our job here is twofold. Yes, we need to teach the baseline level of nuts and bolts, like you gotta know what Chaincode is and XPubs, and like you have to understand that. But we also are trying to give people the opportunity to fall in love with Bitcoin. And this is a possibly apocryphal quote. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And I think these programs are, yes, we are teaching Bitcoin, but we have to be really teaching why Bitcoin matters. And we need to teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Essentially, we need to be teaching them about the whys, and not necessarily the hows, because the hows will change over time. Yes, they will get jobs because of those hows, but if you've been doing this for any period of time, you know that it's the whys that keep us coming back. So there wasn't really a document that captured this philosophy of Bitcoin development, and so we went out and wrote one. We worked with Qala Rosenbaum, who wrote Grokking Bitcoin, and originally I pitched this as a book of quotes by Greg Maxwell, but Qala mixed in some other great people too. I think it's an amazing document. We haven't really pushed it too hard. It could definitely use some work around the edges, but for a group like this, it would be great if you looked it over and gave us feedback. And I think it is a pretty amazing doc, and sort of like, it's the first talk of all these programs that I've always wanted. Because there's a big difference between talking about things and actually like putting them in practice. As in, we can talk about privacy, or we can actually do something about privacy. And you know, I think in a lot of the programs that we run, there's a pretty big divide between how people embrace sort of our teaching method. And it's dawned on me that the majority of people actually want this. They want things that are familiar, they want things that are safe, they want to be able to measure their progress in a quantifiable way, but it also means that people have to be told exactly what to do. And if you need to be told exactly what to do all the time, then you might be really good for like a factory job or a bank teller, but like the world of open source and self-sovereignty, that might not be a great fit. And you probably need to be able to figure some stuff out on your own. The guy on the bottom is especially confusing to me, but apparently this is a cross-cultural issue, and this guy is getting really creative. This isn't just a student problem, this is a teacher problem as well. And because I think a lot of the teachers that we have and that we are continuing to try to pull in are pretty focused on sort of that transfer of knowledge and not helping our learners learn how to learn. And you know, I think the knowledge transfer, of course, is important, but the pedagogy and the cultural transmission are more important. So Qala actually wasn't run like seminar style. There was not a one-to-many kind of like transmission. We worked mostly on projects, and we essentially, our instructors were engineering managers. So we have a couple of them here today, and this was a totally like untried concept, but the idea is that we run our training program like a software engineering team. So we had daily stand-ups, and essentially the instructors were there to unblock the students from whatever projects they were working on. And for a lot of students, I was really uncomfortable. Like, tell me what to do, or tell me what I need to know. But this like exploratory learning, we hope will reinforce that like once you know how to learn something, that you could go off and learn whatever you want. Because I think we live in a society that requires like people to be told what to do most of the time, and that's unsettling. Like, I don't want to live in a world where this box exists. But sadly, my experience is that most people do want to be told what to do. And I'm glad it's a quality that many Bitcoiners are not particularly fond of. But I believe that the education that we can build is both effective and scales because it's based on a learning with and learning from model. So we have to be learning from each other. And I think a lot of the work that we're doing is trying to help people break out of that sort of approval-chasing, competitive individual mindset, which, to be fair, is something that I've fallen prey to many, many times myself. But yeah, we need people who can figure things out for themselves. So, I've mentioned a few things that we aren't looking for, and I don't want to be overly negative. Let me talk to you about what we are looking for. And the first thing that we're looking for are people that are willing to do the work. So, not just show up, but show up prepared, and show up for others. And the people that are willing to sort of throw themselves into the abyss of the learning process. And that's not for grades, that's not for praise, but that's for them. And essentially, this boils down to grit and passion. And this is hard to find because we live in a culture of convenience. Technology has helped us become so productive, and life becomes easier and easier and easier, but I worry that that means that we start avoiding the hardest things. And learning is hard. And in a lot of ways it's a dance with demons. It's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's about overcoming our own self-doubt and about tuning out the noise in order to focus. So I'm going to introduce you to Eni. She lives in Nigeria, and she was a mechanical engineer that fell in love with programming and found her way to Bitcoin. So she learned to code, and in January, we talked about the idea of her quitting her job to focus on full-time Bitcoin study. And in a place like where she's from, that's an all-in move. So she not just put in the hours, but she put in the emotional labor of justifying her conviction to her family and friends, and that is not easy. So she started in January. By June, I'm happy to say that she landed a job at Qala as an engineer, and her life will never be the same. She's junior, but adding people like this to our community, this is going to change everything, and this is the kind of change that I want to see. So the second thing that we look for is generosity. And even as a newcomer, I think it's really clear that some people are comfortable taking more than they give. But we also encounter people that just, right from the very beginning, are consistently going out of their way to help others and making everyone around them better. So generosity is a little bit counterintuitive for an education program. Most educational experiences are done in isolation. You take multiple choice tests in your own chair, keep your eyes on your paper, you write your own reports, you give your own oral presentations. And most schools are sort of creating these solitary tasks to test your knowledge. But life isn't like that, and certainly work isn't like that. And so we are looking for people who are generous. We are looking for people like Jay. So if you went to BitDevs on Wednesday, you saw Jay. He told me it was not his favorite performance, but Jay's the reason that I am here today, and he's the reason that you are here today. In fact, he's the reason why thousands of people across the world are getting together to talk about Bitcoin. So Jay started BitDevs, and in 10 years, he has missed 3 monthly meetups. He shows up month in, month out for the benefit of others. Not for fame, not for making money off of a single person that's passed through those doors, always present, always patient, always generous, and he does it because giving back makes the thing he loves stronger. So I see Jay as our own Bitcoin angel. I don't do a ton of speaking, but I am here because this is Jay's work. And so Jay has really created a community made up of people that are approachable and welcoming, and dare I say, fluffy. This is Peter Woolley. Peter is a treasure. He should be wrapped in something soft and protected at all times. Funniest thing about this photo is that there's this hand. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I don't know why it's there, but it is. So there's two things that I want to see in the world that don't currently exist that I think will further our mission. And the first thing is I want to see a game for Bitcoin curious developers. So I don't know exactly what that looks like. I have never designed a game, but I want to see that happen. And someone has already sort of done like a proof of concept here. So Satsi put Try Bitcoin up already. And she is another person that tortures herself to learn this stuff and always finds a way to be generous and give back. I also want to create a curriculum platform that has two attributes. It's test-driven, so you can get immediate feedback, and it has a built-in community, and that is deceivingly hard to do. So, we need people that are willing to do the work, of course, but I want to build a place where technical learners can go down the rabbit hole together, free of charge, and want to have real outcomes on the other side. I want them to get real jobs, create companies, and solve our hardest problems. So if you're interested in working in any of these, please come find me. Okay, I will wrap it up. But these are long-term projects because we are playing a long-term game. And there's this book from the 80s called Finite and Infinite Games by James Carse. A finite game is something with defined rules, recognized winners and losers. They're sports, wars, playing the stock market, and they are zero-sum. And they only work if you're pursuing something scarce. Now, this is something that we are intimately familiar with because this is integral to how Bitcoin works. And we have all signed up for these games. But if the games we play are only finite games like status games, then we might be chasing prizes that really don't hold any meaning. And so I'd suggest that for us to win, that we might focus our energy on the infinite game. And the infinite game is a game that we play for the purpose of continuing to play rather than just winning. It's like when you're playing with your 5-year-old nephew, don't throw the ball as hard as you possibly can to win that game, because that's not how it's done. The point is to keep going, to share something with someone else. And so this talk ends with a request. Just realize this is coming from someone who's totally unqualified. I am not a trained educator. I'm a terrible programmer. I'm not an OG Bitcoiner. I'm as unqualified as anybody to ask this of you. But I'm going to ask you to start something. And I want you to start something that you want to see in the world. Do something that will make people miss you when you're gone. Bring together a group of people that didn't know each other, or pass the torch to someone new, or create a local movement. Because the way to move the needle in the infinite game is to just start. And small leaps are totally acceptable, as are big ones. And so these next couple of days are a moment in time. You have 2 days before you get back on your metal tube and go back to wherever you came from. And it's certainly not convenient for us to all be here. But we are here because it matters to us, even though it might compromise our OPSEC. And so I encourage you to spend these next couple days scheming and dreaming big. And I wish that when you return home, that dozens of people have planted seeds in your head and that you've reciprocated and made a mark on them. And so I thank you for caring about something that means so much to me. I thank you for making the thing that I love stronger. A room full of doers in the depths of a bear market is a really nice time to launch a movement. And so I look forward to seeing what you're going to do.